Hi, I'm J.M. Blakely, and today we're going to go over a tricep kickback exercise that you probably are familiar with, done maybe a lot. I want to point out though that there's a big difference when you do things all the way right as opposed to almost right. You get pretty good results with almost right in life, but you get spectacular results if you do it all the way right. So we're going to try to do this exercise all the way right. And sometimes subtle differences. And you'll note that all I'm going to change is just little tiny things. That should be a big alarm in your head, talking about little things that make big differences. Because then you can go back and look in your training and your life anywhere for where you can make a little difference that might have a huge effect. So first things first, we need to know how the triceps are made, how they are in our body, so that we can understand why this exercise has to be done this way to be all the way right. So we'll go through this. This is the back of your arm hanging like this. This is your shoulder blade, your humerus or upper arm bone, and then your radius and ulna, the two lower arm bones. And they all tie in, meaning they all go to or insert down on your elbow, right on the back here, right all there. But they fan out and spread out into a big, thick aponeurosis, which is a fancy word for a big, thick tendon band, flat band, aponeurosis. And let's start with the lateral head. It starts here on the humerus. That's important to remember, on the humerus. And it goes down and attaches here. But it actually only goes a little ways muscularly, and then the rest of the way through the aponeurosis, through the band. So the muscle part looks like this. And it's that ball on the outside of your arm. The intermediate head here starts here, and it goes down this way, and it's kind of underneath the lateral head. But it also starts, and it connects again down through the aponeurosis to the insertion on the ulna. Now here's the important part. The medial head, the long head. It ties in down here too, along this aponeurosis, but it comes up and it does not at all attach to the humerus or upper arm bone. It attaches to the back of the scapula. So it's this long head, short head, and you can see where this kind of makes that horseshoe shape. And this is the band or aponeurosis, but it all ties in down here. So all three of these muscles, here's the long head, the back of your arm. So that's the long part that forms the longer part of that horseshoe. And this is the shorter head, the lateral head. So you can see these on anybody that flexes their arm. There's this big band down here, all this musculature. Remember, there's a intermediate head that's underneath the ones you can see. You can see the lateral head and you can see the medial head, or the short and long head. And then there's this big thick band that goes down here. Now, what you need to remember is one of these heads, the long head, the medial head, the one on the inside of your arm, doesn't connect at all to the humerus. It ties on up here. That's the important thing to remember. So now that we have the anatomy down, I'll refer to that later when we do the exercise. So let's do this exercise. It is pretty standard of a tricep kickback or French press, with tiny modifications made to account for this structure. We're going to take this structure into account, and the goal here is muscle development, not muscle strength. And that's important, because what we're going to do by making these adjustments is we're going to make this exercise as hard as we can. When you want development in a muscle, size and shape, you want to do things the hardest way possible. You want to make it hard on the muscle so the muscle has to grow big to get the job done. When you want strength and power, you want to do everything the most mechanically efficient and easy way that you can think of, because that way you can move more weight. So there's an inverse relationship between how mechanically hard you make an exercise and how much weight you can use, and vice versa. So if you want to use a lot of weight, you got to be very efficient. If you want to do it really inefficiently so that the muscle has to grow, you can only use a little bit of weight. So you've done these before, and you think you know how strong you are and how much weight you can use on this, and if you do it all the way right, that number is going to precipitously drop. You will not be able to move your normal amount of weight doing it this way. And so if your ego is bigger than you want your muscles to be, fine, they'll stay small. But if you set your ego aside and you do this all the way right with a little bit of weight, then your muscles will grow. And here's another benefit of doing everything that you want for development the hardest way. You use less weight. If you use less weight, it is easier to recover from. That means you can train sooner. You'll be back and ready to go sooner than if you used a ton of weight. So for development, this is a double bonus. Do things the hard way. Find the tough road to go. Make your muscles work extra hard. The weight doesn't matter if what you want is size and shape and development. So you got to be able to do that. You got to be able to accept it. If I do them this JM's way, man, I'm gonna not be able to use as much weight, and so therefore I'm not as much of a man. If that's the way you think, this won't work for you. But if you want big, shapely triceps, and you want to recover quickly and get back to making them even bigger, then you should probably try this. All right, so here's a standard setup for some French press. You need something to support your back, and oftentimes you can just flip around a preacher bench. Or you can use any sort of support as long as it doesn't get in our way. You'll see why that's important in a minute. So it has to be fairly low. It can't be a large upright back pad. But you need something to support your back. And this works pretty well. So he's at a slight angle here, and we can adjust the angle that he sits at. Move your hips back a bit, Gary. And that's going to put him more upright. Move your hips forward more than you had him. And that's going to give us a little angle. There's a plane going, so I'll pause right here. I live by a military base. That's a C-138, protecting America. You may have to adjust your angle due to lack of flexibility. So don't be afraid to. Find something that is doable. Notice I did not say comfortable. So if you want to be comfortable in your bodybuilding and strength training, good luck, because it's going to be a little uncomfortable. But you don't want to be in a position where you can't do the exercise properly. So give yourself some leeway as you're learning to perfect the exercise. So we'll just start at a little bit of an angle, and that's pretty comfortable. Gary, do this as you would normally do your French press, your tricep stuff. Let's just see what we're starting with, and then I'll adjust it. Do about 2 more. Okay, stop for a moment, set it in your lap. So let me explain what we're going to try to do. No, let me have him do it, and then I'll explain why we did it. So Gary, put the bar up straight up over your head. Now, I want you to adjust your elbows forward instead of turning out to the sides, because we're going to bend and we want the bar to go behind us. So let's rotate the elbows forward in front of us. Block it out all the way for me, straight up. Good. Elbows forward. Good. Now, his elbows are in front of his face. We're going to adjust it so he never sees his elbows again. Put your elbows behind your head, Gary. Behind your head. Now, that's going to stretch this long head, if you recall from the beginning of the tricep. It's going to put it on stretch right now. Elbows towards me, forward. Good. Now let the bar come down. And I'm going to keep his elbows back. Let it stretch. Let it stretch. And press it up. Now it's not going to end up over his head. It's going to end up on this angle, which again is going to make this long head work harder. If he brings this bar over his head here, like he was doing, this is his end position, this muscle can kind of relax a little bit. Straighten your arms a little bit. All right, straighten it out. Push it away from you. Good. Now if I hold it here, he's got to hold this angle. Now let it stretch down. Don't ever see, use your peripheral vision and look for your elbows. Let it stretch, relax, relax. Now, push it up, but also push it back. Push it up and back, away from you. Reach for the back corner back there. So this is going to put this muscle on stretch like crazy. You'll notice that. You want to try to keep your elbows in, but see how they're starting to creep forward? So when he stretches down, they want to come forward. So now they're back. So when he comes down, they want to come this way. They want to come forward. Bring them forward quite a bit, Gary, and show them how easy this is if you have your elbows in front of you. And if I want to use a lot of weight, that's what you can do. But I want big triceps with this exercise. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a small adjustment. And that adjustment is no CM. No CM triceps. No CM tricep extension. Do not see those elbows ever again. They stay behind your field of vision. You push up and back. Rest for a moment, Gary. Now, we did that because we know something about the tricep. Let me have your arm here. So we know something about how the tricep is built. The short head is on this bone. So it goes from here to here. It only affects this. The head that's underneath, that intermediate head. It hooks on from this bone and down here again. It only affects this joint. But the long head ties in on his scapula. It doesn't even touch this bone. It goes from the scapula right down and ties into this aponeurosis. Let's your tricep for me for a second. So here's the long head. I can't see, let me see. There's another plane coming. Here's the short head, here's the long head, and here's that band of tendon, that aponeurosis. All three triceps hook onto this thing and move here. But one of them, out of the three, doesn't touch this bone. It starts way down here, this long head. And so by pushing back and putting it on stretch to begin, and then keeping it back there, it stays activated. And it's a good way to develop that thickness in the back of your arm on the inside. Another trick to this is to think that. Think when you're down in the stretch, Gary, when you begin to push up, don't think about using this ball on the outside, but rather, by voluntary choice, choose to use the inside more. This part inside, this part of your tricep. Let this part kind of, it'll go on for the ride, but don't focus on it. Focus your concentration on that inside of it. So let's take it up above the head again. Now, push the elbows back, keep them back. Now stretch it down, and this time when you press, I want you thinking about this inside. Press from in here, up and back. Now it's kind of creeping forward. So I'm going to push you back. You ready? Mm-hmm. And what happens is as you fatigue, he's going to want to creep forward more and more and more. He'll start pushing me, and I'm going to push him. I'm going to really stretch him on this one. Stretch back. Good. Now stay back there. Nice. Now full stretch down. Really stretch it down. Really stretch it down. But if we do this, we let the elbows come forward. How much? That's not as hard. You can feel the pressure let up. But when you have that full stretch and you push those elbows back, you can feel that that's the hard way to do it. The easy way to do it is with elbows forward. The hard way to do it, okay, rest. So let's go over a couple things. The most important thing is that you put your elbows, your elbow joint, behind your field of vision, not in front. And trust me, as you fatigue, you'll start to see those elbows creep forward for you. And that's okay, just fight it and get better at it. And use less weight. Because you can't do it right for all the reps. If you're getting those elbows, if you're getting about half the reps behind you and half your reps in front of you, you're still stuck on using weight. And I'm telling you, you'll get more development if you lessen the weight and do it right. Because it's a deeper contraction. And it's the harder way to do things. And when you make the muscle work hard, instead of doing it the easy way, the cheat way, the way that's mechanically easier for you to do, if you make the muscle do the hard thing, it has to grow. You've got to be thinking about hardness, difficulty, depth of contraction, not how much weight you do for how many reps. If you're doing a set and rep thing and writing the weights down, you're going to have a hard time with this, because this is more by feel. This is choosing the hardest way and making the muscle work harder. You're trying to make it hard on yourself. You're not trying to get through a bunch of reps so you can put more weight on. It's a different mindset, and you have to change it if you want to get the maximal growth out of this exercise. So number one, we make a small adjustment by where we put the humerus. Instead of letting it come in front, we try to angle it back. Number two, instead of pressing straight up and extending our arms, we extend up and back. The military is screwing with me today because they're sending over another C-138. Something's going on. That's just United States readiness. We're ready around here. So two things. First, we want to put the elbows behind the vision, and two, we want to finish in a straight line up and back, not up and over. Now when it's up and back, the weight's pulling down over here, which is further going to stretch that. Give me your arm for just a moment, Gary. So when we're here, the weight is driving straight down. But if I have him go this way, the weight is driving down over here and stretching this arm, I don't want to hurt you, further back this way. And what part of the tricep is it stretching? It doesn't stretch the medial head or the lateral head or the intermediate head at all. But it stretches the long head like crazy. You can't help but feel that. Now, it also stretches, fortunately or unfortunately, the joint capsule of the shoulder. And maybe if you're really tight in your pecs, put your arm up again. And maybe if you're really tight in the pecs, some of that pec, because the pec ties on deep under here. So when I put this back, I get some pec stretch. But it's probably, if you're feeling a lot of lack of flexibility, it's probably from the long head of the tricep, which is what we want to work, and maybe some of the joint capsule or the pecs. An easy fix for that is to find a doorway, and every time you walk through it, like if you're going to the bathroom, when you go to relieve yourself, you got to walk through a doorway. Put your hands up on a doorway and walk under and stretch, walk back. Walk under and stretch, walk back, walk under and stretch, walk back, and then go do your business. If you do that every time you have to go during the day, it won't take long before your shoulders will be flexible. Now, they're not flexible now, or if they're not flexible now, it's because we don't put our arms back that way. I don't have anything I want to do with my arms back that way. So, now I'm inflexible because of shoulder damage, but most people are not very flexible unless you throw a baseball or a javelin or a tennis serve. So there's application for it, but if you don't do those things, you're probably pretty tight. So use a doorway stretch. It's easy. There's doorways you go through, and I guarantee you got to relieve yourself at least a couple times a day. So you should be stretching a couple times a day if you care about this. And the further you get it back there, the better quality you're going to get. If you're so tight like me that you can't even do one without seeing your elbows, then this exercise isn't as valuable to you, because you can't get into the proper position to make it valuable. So it's worth doing some flexibility work to do things right so you can get more growth, more muscular development. Now, when you're first starting out, you get both. When you do a powerlifting program or a bodybuilding program, your muscles and your strength go up pretty much together for a couple of years. And so you really don't have to care that much. But if you want a lot of strength, you have to go to a strength program. If you want a lot of muscle development and size, you got to go to a bodybuilding program. You can trade those off during a year, but you need to train specifically for what you want. So let's see if I forgot anything, Gary. Let's do one last one to show them how to do this. I'm going to make an adjustment on him. You're gonna let it stretch down. Don't see those elbows. Now, move your hips out a little bit here. Good. Now we're gonna create, there's our military helping me out. I'm gonna create a more of an angle so I can get that finish position. Now straighten those arms, push away from you. Good, now bend. Let it stretch, let it hang. Good, now straighten, up and back, push back. Now slide your hips back in. Let's see what this changes. Slide your hips under, slide, okay. The end of the motion won't be as difficult for him now, because it'll be more over his head. Straighten those arms, straighten those arms, straighten those arms. Not quite as difficult, is it? All right, rest. So let's call this the no-see-um overhead triceps extension for now, until one of you comes up with a better name for it. But do you see how a small change in doing just even part of the motion, because most of this is the same. Most of everything we've done here, except for the lockout to the back and keeping the elbows back, is probably just like you're doing it now. And so keep in the back of your mind that sometimes, maybe a lot of the time, small changes can make big differences for you. And if you're aware of that, you start looking for small changes you can make. And you stop doing things just because that's the way you've always done them. Be open-minded to this idea that a little change, and when you try this, you'll see this little change makes the weight you can use go way down. But it makes the work that the tricep has to do, especially the long head, a lot. Now, I guess while we're at it too, if you want to set up a cable system with a low cable, you can do that here too. If you want to invert yourself on a high cable and look down at the ground, you can kind of do that too. But this is the easiest use of gravity to get that backward position. But there's modifications you can make. Have fun, enjoy. You know, do whatever feels good to you, but follow the rules of how the body is put together, and you'll have success. So I hope this helps you, and I hope it really opens your mind to thinking that there are little things that I can look for in my training that might make a big difference for me and open something up and give me a breakthrough. Because they're there, and some people know about them, and you just got to start looking for them. And you got to start looking for them by yourself too. I learned a lot of this by trial and error, just playing around with things in the gym. So don't be afraid to do that. You don't need an expert to find everything on your body and tell you about it. You can do some of that yourself. So good luck with it. Let's call it the no-see-um tricep extension overhead. And thanks for listening. What do you think, Aaron? Good? Too much? What do you think?
We'll see how